Well, from the hardwood to the ice to the gridiron to the pitch, there's been no shortage of momentous moments for UConn athletics.
Titles and trophies made their way to stores, plus several sports reached heights they'd never seen before.
And as we officially begin a new year with new expectations, we feel like it's only fitting to look back at chapter 2025 for UConn athletics.
But it's not just the current Huskies who fared well in 2025. Those that call themselves UConn alumni saw major achievements. Plus, we'll bring you some of our favorite stories we got to share this year. Connecticut Game Week starts right now.
Well, if Sean and I were going to be concise and pick just one word to sum up 2025 for all of UConn sports, historic is one that pretty easily comes to mind. Monumental moments were hit on all cylinders: hardwood, ice, gridiron, pitch, you name it. There's something major to talk about. Welcome into Connecticut Game Week and Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Alexa Harley.
And I'm Sean Humphrey. Happy New Year indeed. I know when that calendar flipped from 2025 to 2026, the usual approach is to do a whole rebrand and think about all the exciting hopes of a new year. Unfortunately, Shawnee McFly stayed home, so we can't predict the future for Husky athletics, but what we can do is take a look back at some of the biggest moments of the year for UConn sports. And what better way to start than right here? National championship number 12 for UConn women's hoops. For a lot of fans and even the players, this one felt different. The team hadn't lifted the trophy since 2016, and there were thorns and thistles on the road back to the top. Over the past few years, the Huskies have had star players miss entire seasons. They've had heartbreaking losses in the final rounds of the tournament, so naturally the significance of this achievement wasn't lost on the players or their head coach.
Been through a lot of adversity individually, but then also as a whole and as a unit. So to be able to win that and win it together, it meant more than words can describe.
As I've gotten to this age, I've started to think more about they're all incredibly significant to the people who won them, the people on their teams. That's why on our banners now in Worth, in our practice facility, we actually have the names of the entire roster on the banner so that, you can remember that's kind of who it means the most to.
Now, UConn men's hockey has come a long way from the days of the windy outdoor rink it used to call home, and this past season was about Husky hockey history. How about a program first? The team had never secured a bid to the NCAA tournament, and that all changed in 2025. UConn skated past Connecticut foe Quinnipiac in the Allentown Regional. The final score there was 4-1. Then on the doorstep of a Frozen Four appearance in the team's first trip to the tournament, heartbreak hit the Huskies. With just over 2 minutes left in overtime, the Penn State Nittany Lions scored the game-winning goal and unfortunately ended UConn's magical season.
One other big moment of 2025 falls onto the men's hoops team. Yes, their three-peat dreams went unfulfilled with an early exit in the NCAA tournament on a one-possession loss to the eventual champion Florida. But the Huskies gritted their teeth, waiting for their time for revenge with a December Garden date with those Gators. And they got their vengeance at Store South with a 77-73 win over Florida. And yes, that Florida win was huge for morale given how the end of last season played out. But that win was also a part of UConn's A-plus handling of a non-conference gauntlet. They secured wins over ranked Illinois, BYU, Kansas, of course, Florida, with the only big loss coming to number 1 Arizona. And Hurley has said time and time again this year the defense was going to be the deal breaker on whether the Huskies finish in the win column on any given night.
The difference with Solo and the difference with our team is that, we're bringing a defense to the court that can sustain us when we have off shooting nights, and when we're playing against another really good defense. We can win a game with our defense. Last year, we could literally never win a game with our defense.
Well, almost every good movie needs a sequel, and 2025 was a fantastic follow-up for UConn football. After finishing 9-3 in 2024, the Huskies tied that win total this year. That's not to mention a record-breaking season for Skylar Bell, who became the program's first ever first-team All-American and was a finalist for the Biletnikoff Award. Now, I'll admit this year's Fenway Bowl was one to forget, but at 9-4, the 2025 Huskies will still go down as a team to remember.
One big reason for the back-to-back 9-win seasons was, of course, the leadership of head coach Jim Mora, who departed for a new chapter at Colorado State after the Huskies' final regular season win. And with Mora heading west, the Huskies brought in a man from the Midwest, former Toledo head coach Jason Candle. And the response to the lighting of the Candle era has been very exciting. He's a guy who became the Rockets' all-time winningest coach with 2 MAC titles. He's also had 2 of the best recruiting classes that conference has ever seen. And we'll have to wait a little bit until the first official game of the Candle era. Obviously, football doesn't start till fall, but fans will get to see what his version of Husky football could look like with spring football. And finally, it was a huge season on the pitch for the men's soccer team. The Huskies made their first NCAA tournament appearance since 2018, earning a number 13 seed and reaching the Sweet 16. 2025 was also the first double-digit win season for Coach Chris Bondi since 2018. Plus, several Huskies earned Big East honors throughout the regular season, and they were major contributors all year long. Guys like Austin Brummett and Kyle Durham were huge for the Huskies this season.
Well, the trading card is a collectible with a unique history, from the rarest cards of the early 1900s all the way to the players you know and love today. Die-hard Husky fan Ryan Shields' card collection has given him a chance to have a piece of UConn history for himself.
Obviously, the 2 things that really drive value of a card is desirability and rarity. So when those 2 things intersect, you have some of the most valuable cards.
And some of Ryan Shields' cards are more than just rare, they're one of one. He's lived in Connecticut his whole life, and being a Husky fan comes with the territory. But the way he expresses his fandom goes beyond checking the box score.
To me, collecting cards is the best way to connect to the players and the teams. It feels like you have a stake in the player and the team when you own their cards, when they're playing really well. The values go up, which is cool, but you're also root for them at the same time.
Throughout his life, UConn women's basketball has given Ryan plenty to celebrate, but it's not always easy to get a hold of one of the reigning national champions in a 2.5 by 3.5 inch form. Take leading scorer AZ Fudd, for example.
If you want her cards, they're very hard to find.
She's a key starter for the Huskies, but in the card world, the adversity that led to the 2025 banner has kept her out of the rotation.
She's not in many products because she was injured when a lot of the new Panini stuff was coming out. So she only has really one flagship product, and that's the Panini UConn set, which is a dedicated UConn set.
That means it shouldn't be a surprise to learn that the Fudd card he's holding is rare.
This is one of her top cards in existence, one of only 2 one-of-one autos that she has.
And while some cards go for thousands or even hundreds of thousands, don't expect the Newington native to give this one up anytime soon.
Because it's virtually irreplaceable, one of her top cards, and I think super undervalued right now comparatively to other players. That's a long-term hold for sure.
As women's basketball's popularity grows, the trading card market booms. But Ryan says there's also an inverse effect.
I can't tell you how many people I know that were not fans of WNBA prior or UConn prior that got into it through sports cards, and now they're obsessed. I think right now we're in like the Jordan era of the WNBA with Clark and Paige and Juju Watkins coming up. I have some Juju Watkins as well. So I think looking back, this is going to be a transformational period for both the college level and the WNBA. So yeah, I'm investing.
The greatest point guard ever in the history of basketball, men's and women's.
Well, it was a huge year for UConn hoop superstar Sue Bird. She was inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame in September. And then to round out the year, she got to see her jersey retired inside the arena where she made so much history. We'll take you back to that historic Sunday at Gampel next. But first, it was also a big 365 days for some notable UConn alumni. We'll tell you who was the best in show in 2025 in the pro sports world when Connecticut Game Week returns. Well, it's time now for Best in Show, brought to you by New Balance of Avon and South Windsor. Now, UConn, no stranger to producing top athletic talent that go into the pro sports world and then absolutely dominate. I mean, you've got hoopers galore, baseball stars, and many, many more.
And 2025 was a big year for those that call themselves UConn alumni. And as we are looking back at this year, trying to determine who was Best in Show, a trio of former Huskies really stood out from the rest. And you guys at home probably know what's coming.
Yeah, you can't talk about 2025 without talking about this player right here, Paige Beckers, who hit bucket after bucket on the court and then just kept collecting hardware as the months ticked by. Now, she was a key part of last year's championship team, winning the Wade Trophy, Honda Sports Award, and Big East Player of the Year in the process. Then, of course, she's drafted #1 overall by the Dallas Wings, piecing together a WNBA season that was so good she took home the Rookie of the Year award as well. She was an All-Star, an All-WNBA second team, and was a finalist for the NCAA Woman of the Year for her academic and community excellence.
And Stephon Castle ruled All-Star Weekend in 2025. He was the dunk contest runner-up with that slam there. And the Rising Stars MVP, the San Antonio Spurs, drafted him 4th overall. And after he finished his collegiate career at UConn with a national championship, he picked up right where he left off. Castle averaged just under 15 points on his way to winning Rookie of the Year. That means it was a Husky sweep in both the NBA and WNBA rookie races. Castle has also had a standout start to his sophomore season in an 8-game win streak for the Spurs. He was their leading scorer. How about that?
And last but certainly not least, former UConn baseball standout and New Britain native George Springer had a spring in his step in 2025, if you will, specifically in the MLB playoffs. The Blue Jays outfielder drilled multiple home runs, perhaps none more exciting than the pennant-winning Game 7 3-run blast of the ALCS to send the Jays to the World Series. He boosted his career postseason homer total to 23, which is tied for 3rd all-time, by the way. And he now has a career postseason slugging percentage of .540, surpassing Mickey Mantle and cementing his status as an MLB playoff legend at the plate.
Well, before Sue Bird was a basketball Hall of Famer, Olympic gold medalist, or WNBA champion, she played on a UConn team that had only won its first of what would become a record 12 national championships. And in a return to stores, she saw her jersey number 10 take its place in the rafters, permanently joining the banners she played a role in hanging. It had been some time since Sue Bird had been in stores, but after this moment, her name will never leave Gamble Pavilion, and her number will never be worn by another Husky.
It's really such an honor. I mean, you look at all the names above me, you look at all the plaques, the Player of the Years, All-Americans, obviously the other banners with the championships, like so much history. And so to be, currently, we obviously know in the next 3, 4, 5 to 10 years it's going to change. But right now, I'll just be the 3rd. And so to be, with Rebecca, with Swin, being the 3rd player to have their jersey retired in the Hall of Fame, I mean, it's really special.
And upon returning to her old stomping grounds, the 2-time national champion says reaching the top of the mountain and cutting down the nets isn't what she remembers most. She says it's the little things about college life that come flooding back now.
But it really is more about the moments in the locker room, or the dumb stuff we did in our dorm room, the late nights we maybe did or didn't have. That's really where a lot of my core memories are when I think about my time here, when I think about UConn. But more than anything, it's really a place where I grew up, a place where a lot of who I am as a person and as a player, that foundation was built. And so a lot of the memories are wrapped up in that too.
Now, in case you missed it, UConn has become the standard in college basketball. The PA announcer welcomes fans to the basketball capital of the world before home games, and the women's team's 12 titles are the most of any program, men's or women's. But part of the reason Sue Bird's number now hangs in the rafters is because her years at UConn helped build the legs of the beast that became a giant.
We weren't a dynasty yet. We weren't fielding questions. I can only imagine players today, the questions they have to field with dynasty talk and legacy talk. Nobody was asking us that stuff. Nobody was asking me what I wanted my UConn legacy to be. That wasn't a thing, right? And then you fast forward, I'm really bad at math, but you fast forward to Stewie's freshman year, and she's like, oh, we're going to win 4 in a row. And that became like the new bar.
In 2002, Bird was the National Player of the Year, flanked by future Hall of Famer Diana Taurasi and fellow Hall of Famer Swin Cash on a team that went undefeated on its way to a national championship. Coach Gino Auriemma remembers how it all began, with the then New York State Player of the Year choosing Connecticut over dozens of other schools.
That decision, for Sue to come to Connecticut eventually played out into us putting together the best basketball team of all time.
In between 5 Olympic gold medals, 4 WNBA championships, and countless other accolades in a decorated professional career, Bird has managed to inspire the next generation of women's basketball players. Look no further than current UConn guard Kaylee Heckel.
Sue's my favorite player of all time, and I've watched her a lot when I was growing up. It was just really cool to see her jersey get retired, and such a great moment for her and her family and the program.
And in an era of explosive growth for the sport, Bird says sometimes she still can't believe the important part she's played in where the game is today.
The further I get away, the more I'm able to look back and kind of have a better understanding of the impact. Not just of myself, not just of my class or this school, but that generation of women's basketball players. And to see where everything is now, I mean, to be honest, it really is surreal because we all knew, we all believed, honestly, you guys all knew, you believe, but we didn't know when. And in a sense, you could argue it happened faster than any of us would have thought.
Well, 2025 was a big year for this guy, Dan Hurley. He co-authored a book, and within its pages, he shares a firsthand perspective at some of the best and worst moments of his coaching career. And I got the chance to talk with him about how he approaches coaching in a college hoops landscape that's always changing. That conversation when Connecticut Game Week returns. Well, I think it goes without saying that there really is no one quite like Dan Hurley. Over the last couple of seasons, the microscope has focused more and more and more on his coaching style and his off-the-court antics. And this past year, Hurley co-authored a book where he was able to share his story in his own words. And within its pages, Hurley peels back the layers, really dives deep into the struggles of last season and his own personal battle with mental health. And the UConn Hoops coach is very open about his own emotional journey and therapy. And it's also something that he believes has made him a better man and a better head coach. Was getting to write this book, especially with how last season ended and some of the moments that transpired, therapeutic for you to kind of put it all onto hard copy? You don't have to carry that anymore?
I would say that what I didn't anticipate for myself was it was a little jarring to read some of the earlier chapters that got into the time of my life, in particular at Seton Hall in high school as a player, when I was struggling a lot with the comparison trap, the comparison to my brother, the comparison to the Hurley basketball legacy, as well as an unhealthy relationship with perfectionism too. So when you're reading that in the book, it's like brings you almost back to that time, and it was harder for me to get through those chapters when I was reading it. It was like put me in a little bit of a funk.
Well, knowing that you lived through that and now, coach in a Division I program, are you able to relate to some of the athletes now who maybe deal with the comparison trap and perfectionism and chasing that type of high?
Yeah, I think for me, I know what to look for with young men that are struggling. Mentally struggling, emotionally struggling with being the best version of themselves. I think I'm able to be vulnerable and have those conversations because I've been that kid before. Because of what I've been able to experience in my career, I could relate to everyone on the roster. One time in my life I've been the best player, and some other times in my life I've been a struggling player. I think that relatability is it's something that makes me relatable to the players.
O'Connor wrote on X, and I quoted this because it is interesting, that he was fascinated by your holistic behind-the-scenes approach. I'd like to know what that looks like.
What I preach to the players, and this is what helped me come out of the difficulties I went through at Seton Hall was, I identify as Dan Hurley, UConn basketball coach, but I also identify as mentor. Dan Hurley, father, husband, Christian, son, brother, friend. There's more to our identity than just player and coach. Obviously, we obsess over what we do, but for our players, it's like be a well-rounded student, take advantage of your education. Be the best basketball player that you can be. But what does your spiritual life look like? Talk to me about the quality of your friendships and relationships off the court. Like what are your healthy lifestyles? Do you meditate? Do you eat clean? Are you getting a good night's sleep? I think holistically, just taking the absolute best care of ourselves that we could take, continuing to grow our mind. Because these guys are in a decision-making business. Do I shoot? Do I pass? And I think the sharper your mind is, the more well-rounded you are, the better chance you have to make good decisions.
Are the players pretty receptive to some of that, like spiritual, holistic stuff? Or are they kind of like that? I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I'm here to play basketball. I
think a lot of the players are skeptical about the power of meditation and mantras and visualization exercises and listening to podcasts and reading books that are going to put them in the right frame of mind relative to performance and dealing with anxiety. But I think once they get to UConn and they see just how big basketball is, I think they start to feel a little bit of that pressure when they play here, and they look for coping mechanisms and ways that they're able to kind of relax and perform and not have to deal with performance anxiety. So I get a much better buy-in because I practice what I preach. I'm not a hypocrite. And I think when they get here, they realize that the pressure is amped up and that they need tools to try to manage that.
Well, a busy stretch on the hardwood and the ice. Big East play heats up for the men's and women's basketball teams, while the women's hockey teams hopes to cool off an old rival. We'll break down what's in stores next.
Well, we are officially in a new year, and obviously school at Stores has been on pause for the holiday season, but as far as sports goes, there's been no let-up for the Huskies.
And what better way to enjoy the holiday season than with wins, right? The Hoops teams have certainly been doing that so far this year, and will have even more chances to get a W this next week. Here's what's in stores.
All right, starting off strong with the undefeated Huskies. They're tipping off the 2026 season with, same season, but with more Big East play, hosting Seton Hall on Saturday at noon and St. John's on Wednesday at 7 p.m.
And speaking of Big East play, the men from Stores will host rival Marquette on Sunday at Gamble at 2 p.m. It's the first game at Gamble Pavilion since December 5th for the UConn men's hoops team. And later in the week, UConn travels across state lines to face Providence 7 p.m. next Wednesday.
And they're back. The men's and women's hockey team returned to the ice this week after a break. The men traveled to Long Island University on Saturday. The women hosting Providence on Saturday at 3 p.m. And we crammed so much of 2025 into this episode, we're pretty much out of time to even talk about what's coming up this year.
I could try to start talking about what's good. I just heard the 10-second. That means we've only got a little bit of time left.
You don't have the time, Sean.
Okay, we're done with Rockets. No Rockets, no countdowns. We'll see you next week.